I wanted to go a little more in depth with y'all, specifically on that TikTok that I just put out today, March 16th. Skip ahead if you've already seen it. Just watch it again for reference, but here is that. Hey y'all, did you used to see ghosts as a kid? Did you once have abilities that maybe you don't have anymore? Or maybe you never saw anything, but you always really wanted to? Well, I have some good news for you. As much as the Clair senses are gifts, they are also skills that can be practiced and learned. And I've got a few exercises that can help you. So today I have brought you to one of my favorite cemeteries in the state of South Carolina. So let's try a little exercise. Without showing you any names or anything at all, I want you to just sit here with me for a moment and take it in. Do you see anything in your mind's eye? Do you hear anything? Do you get any sensations about this particular grave? Pause for a moment and write anything down that comes to mind about who is buried here. There's no wrong guesses. This is just an exercise. Now, if you know where I am, don't spoil it for everyone else. I'm going to take a few minutes to visit with this old friend of mine. You leave in the comments anything that comes to you. And check back later and I will tell you the story of the person who is interred here. Love you, bye. So I do fully believe that the Clair senses are not only a gift, they are a skill. And kind of in the same ways like somebody being born really good at a sport, whereas other people might have to work at it a little bit harder. Just because you have to work at it does not mean that you cannot play that sport. You just need more practice. And some people just come out of the womb ready to go. My nephew is one of those some people. Crazy, kid's a prodigy. So I'm going to start leading some exercises, as I did today with this. And these are things that if you are wanting to develop these gifts, if you just practice, I promise you'll start to see improvement. A really helpful thing for developing your psychic gifts, and that could be any of those Clair gifts, which, by the way, if you don't know, I'm assuming here that most of you know, it's clairvoyance is the gift of clear sight, clear seeing. Clairaudience is the gift of clear hearing. Claircognizance is knowing. Clairsentience is feeling. Clairgustance is tasting. And clairalience or clairfaction, there's another word for it. Clairalience is clear smelling. And it's not uncommon to have all of them, some of them, a few of them, and to different, varying degrees. You are fully capable of complete mediumship without being a full-on, Lorraine Warren-esque clairvoyant. Bitch, you're making pizza dough. But while you are trying to develop these gifts, and especially if you're only wanting to hone in on one in particular, journaling is very helpful. If you are trying to develop clairvoyance and you randomly get pictures or any kind of visuals, scenes that play out in your mind, you are literally seeing entities appear in front of you. You might have words like flash. Write those down. We're going to journal. We're going to journal and journal and journal. If you are developing clairaudience and you are hearing things, please be able to discern the difference between hearing things and needing to go to the doctor and hearing things, and maybe you should just write that down. Write it down, because as you write things down and as you are able to look back on what you have been experiencing and you're able to kind of sew these threads together and start to see patterns, then you're going to be able to tune in more by having a record. to how your gifts are developing and maybe what you should be leaning into more and what you should stop trying to force. So if you are wanting to follow along with this series, get a small journal. Get a small journal to keep, and I'm thinking I'm gonna do it as well and start to keep a record, because why not? It could be beneficial to also include your dreams in that journal. Having a dream journal is very, very helpful to developing your gifts. We experience a lot in our dreams, and usually if we don't write them down immediately, they're gone. And if we are paying attention to our dreams and we are consistently writing them down, we will be able to notice consistencies. And with the consistencies is where the message lies. And as you develop your gifts, you'll be able to interpret those messages for yourself much easier. And that's what we all want to do anyways, right? We don't want to have to rely on other people to interpret messages for us. When it comes to interpreting messages from Spirit or getting information from Spirit, trust your gut. Trust your gut. You're always going to want to get confirmation and validation, and it's incredibly helpful to have a trusted friend or someone who's a little more experienced that can confirm with their abilities what you are, the information or messages that you're getting. That's always very helpful, but we first and foremost want to make sure that we're a little bit, self-reliant here. Another reason it's very important to develop your gifts yourself is because the power of suggestion is very strong and often incorrect. If you go look at that TikTok and read through the videos, the amount of people saying that they think her name is Clair is crazy. And the reason they are saying they think her name is Clair is because at the beginning of the video, I said Clair senses. And so that little snippet right there stuck in their heads, and then it's the power of suggestion. So now they're convinced, oh, well, then her name is Clair. So Patreon members heard it first. I'm going to read the plaque to you right now. Sign reads, Agnes of Glasgow, 1760 to 1780. Here sleeps Agnes of Glasgow, who tradition says followed her lover of the British Army across the ocean and through the wilderness to Camden. She was taken by death before she found him and buried here at night by King Haekler and his men. So, how many of you picked up on some pertinent information? If you picked up on a woman, a younger woman, you're on track. If you picked up on an A name, you're on track. If you picked up on soldiers, if you picked up on water, if you picked up on war, if you picked up on love and grief and tenacity, those are all key elements of this local legend. If you didn't pick up on any of that, you still might not be too far off, because where I was standing is right next to, or probably also mixed in with, the site of the Battle of Camden from the Revolutionary War. So if you were picking up on men, you were picking up on guns, you were picking up on head wounds or other dramatic wounds, you were still probably picking up on some of the energy that was around me, just maybe not on Agnes herself. A few people were picking up on young children, and there are indeed some young children buried very, very close by. I saw one person even commented on an 8-year-old girl, which was super interesting because my son and I, after we made our little videos about Agnes, went walking through the rest of the cemetery and very, very quickly met an 8-year-old little girl. And we sat there and did some divination with the pendulum and just had a conversation with her for a while, and she was very sweet. So don't beat yourself up if you didn't pick up exactly on Agnes' story. It's no big deal. You could have been picking up on something else, or maybe you're just a little bit rusty. It's practice. You have to practice. It's something you need to work at. The Legend of Agnes of Glasgow was one of my absolute favorite stories as a teenager, and I went I would go to that cemetery quite often and visit her and leave her little things. The legend is that Agnes and her lover were from Scotland, and he got called up for war with the British troops and was shipped off to the colonies at the time to try to keep them under control, and while we were fighting the Revolutionary War. And Agnes, overtaken by love, couldn't let him go and was afraid that she would never see him again. So she actually stowed away in a ship, in a British ship, and made the voyage all the way across, and it ended up in Charleston. And when she got to Charleston, she was immediately started looking for him and was devastated to hear that they believed his regiment had been sent over to fight inland in Camden. Now, from Camden to Charleston now is like a few hours in the car. Back then, on foot was brutal, and it was all backcountry, like thick wilderness to get there. Camden is the oldest inland city in South Carolina, and there was not a whole lot in between. So she had to make a journey, and she did. And she did it, just fueled by love, and she was going to get him. And she made it all the way there. And by the time she got there, she was so sick. And legend says that she befriended King Hagler, who was the chief of the Guattari people. Please forgive my pronunciation, because I never get it right. She passed away due to illness, and she never did find him. And the legend also says that King Hagler is the one who buried her behind the Presbyterian Church, which is now adjacent to Quaker Cemetery. And they do say that they can still see her spirit roaming around throughout the cemetery looking for her lost love. But as with most legends, once we start to put timelines together and factual information, things don't really line up. King Hagler died in 1763, and she would have only been like 3 years old in 1763 and still in Scotland. So that part of the story, probably not true. The timeline for him being in Camden, there were no British troops in Camden at the same time that she would have died in Camden. Does that mean that she didn't actually go there for that? Not necessarily. Maybe she just had bad information. We don't know. Local legends. But that brings me to another thing. When you're developing your psychic gifts, you're going to run into this a lot. Not uncommon. It's not uncommon, even as a seasoned medium, to walk into a place and to pick up on the full story of a ghost, of a well-known ghost, and to be able to recount those details, the details that have been told over and over and over, even if those details are not historically correct. And I believe that is because, one second, legends quite literally take on lives of their own and become tulpas. In a sense. Tulpa isn't exactly the right word. Egregore, maybe. I don't think there's a very specific word for what I'm describing. But along those lines, when people tell a story over and over and over, well, that's how legends are made. But those legends take on a life. They take on those stories. So whether or not those stories are factually correct, it is not uncommon to pick up just strictly on the energy that has been put into the retelling of those stories over and over and over. So you're getting these facts psychically that are not actually fact. They're just tales. It's lore. It's not uncommon to pick up on lore rather than the actual spirit. Because the more energy we pour into something, the more thought that we collectively put into an idea, we create that reality. So, if you go somewhere and you are picking up on things that are not a part of the legend and don't match up with the stories that have been told, do not fret, because there is a chance that you are actually picking up on historical information rather than what has just been told and retold and retold and retold. And honestly, that's more skilled. Discernment and history and doing research and doing your due diligence is how you're going to be able to separate those two things. So I hope that you will join me in developing and enhancing or just strengthening your abilities. The full dramatic retelling of the legend of Agnes of Glasgow will be live, well, not like live, but it will be posted on TikTok tonight, and you can catch that over there. And I look forward to leading you guys, my exclusive Patreon members, in some guided meditations and guided exercises and journaling away with you while we begin this trek together. Alright. I gotta go finish this pizza. Oh, by the way, if you're gluten-free, this isn't like my favorite crust in the world, but it's cheap and it's fast and it's easy. Okay. Love you, bye.